Hello folks, Scott with Dallas Paint Correction and Auto Detailing. I wanted to make another video today. I had a guy ask me about all-purpose cleaners, and then he asked me about foam pads. He asked specifically about foam pads. What foam pads do I use? Well, I have a couple of different opinions, right? I have opinions about everything. So I just wanted to talk about some of the foam pads that I'm using for paint correction, applying a polish, a compound, a wax, a sealant. And there's a couple of them that I've been using for a while that I actually like, and I just wanted to bring it into this video and help that subscriber that asked that question. There's a couple of different ways to look at this, or a couple of different mindsets when I start picking pads and what I'm actually trying to do on the vehicle. Now, you'll notice that a lot of pads today can be kind of thick. This actually happens to be Lake Country's Force pad. This is a thick pad. This happens to be a pad made by Buff and Shine. It's their low profile. I think this is their medium cut polishing pad, compounding pad, however you want to call it. I have an opinion about what's the best. Do you want a thick pad or do you want a thin pad? Well, here's how this works. This happens to be a medium cut Lake Country Force pad. This happens to be a medium cut. They're both orange. This one happens to be made by Buff and Shine. This one is thinner, obviously, than this one. So basically what happens if you kind of just do the scientific math to this, or look at it scientifically, yes, they both companies are saying, Lake Country is saying, and Buff and Shine is saying this is their medium cut compounding pad or polishing pad, however you want to look at it. But these pads will do something differently because this one is thinner and this one is thicker. The thinner the pad, the more power can be transferred from the machine to the surface of the pad. That kind of makes sense, right? You're going to lose a little bit of power from the DA that attaches to the back of this boy, I can't even think now, to the back of this pad. And because it's thicker, the machine doesn't transfer as much of its power through the pad to the surface. Okay, that makes sense mathematically, scientifically, that makes sense. But this is where, even though both of these pads are a medium cut pad, relatively the same type of aggressiveness, if that's the way you want to look at it, I prefer a thicker pad, and I'll tell you why. When I'm working on a car, let's say I'm working under one of the side mirrors or something like that, and let me grab my DA. Sorry, should have been a little bit more prepared. Here's a dual action polisher. It's got a backing plate on the back of this, right? If I put this low profile pad made by Buff and Shine on the backing plate, and that's fine, that works great, it's on the backing plate, you'll notice because it's got a low profile to it, plus it's chamfered, the backing plate is a little bit of an issue when it comes to these kind of pads. If I'm working under a mirror, under a side view mirror on a car, this backing plate can get a little bit close to that mirror and I could possibly hit it, so I could damage the bottom of the paint or scratch the bottom of the paint. I only use these low profile pads, these thin pads, when I'm working on big flat surfaces, like on the side of a pickup truck or on the top of a hood or a roof or a trunk lid. But when I start working around areas of the car that have some body lines to it, I don't like this pad, and I'll tell you why. Because when I'm even using it on a flat surface and I come across a body line, this pad, because it's got a sharp edge to it, when it hits that body line, the DA wants to stop spinning, and I kind of have to loosen my pressure. I have to manipulate the DA to get over that little hump. It's not the end of the world, but I just find these things can be a little inconvenient at times depending on where you're using them on the car. But their ability to cut, I also find with these flat pads, and I'd be interested if you guys are also seeing it as well, these low profile pads, they tend to be, these are probably one of the pads you've seen me talk about, do I prime the pad? For some reason, these low profile pads, I will prime the pads with these from time to time. For whatever reason, these low profile pads will be a little grabby. They'll want to move my DA around and kind of manipulate me instead of me manipulating the pad. And I don't know why it does that. I haven't really thought it through completely. But these low profile pads can give you a little bit of an issue around body lines, underneath side view mirrors. I'm a little concerned about how low profile they are, how close you can get to the backing plate. So typically I'll reserve these for big open surfaces, big panels, and they work fine. But they tend to be a little grabby. I don't know if some of you guys are seeing that. Even on flat surfaces, I tend to feel that priming these to provide a little bit more lubrication, or if I just put a couple dots on this, I'll spray some distilled water on the pad to give me some extra lubrication, then it will help. It won't be so grabby on the surface. But I'd be interested if some of my subscribers or viewers are seeing the same issue with some of these low profile pads being grabby. But when it comes to, I would say about 80% of the time, if I'm going to use a foam pad on paint correction, I like a thicker pad. It's a little bit more forgiving underneath mirrors. I've got a little bit more space between the side of the pad and the backing plate. I've got a little bit more protection. I'm not so close to things with my backing plate when I'm working around tough areas or close quarters around a car, like under a side view mirror. I like these, and I like Lake Country's force pads. I happen to be, I don't know if I want to use the word I'm in love with them, but when it comes to foam pads, I like these pads. They hold up really well. They don't tend to clog up. If I blow into this thing, I don't know if you guys know that, but if there's pads out there that are open cell and closed cell, and if I blow into this pad, I can actually blow my air. I can blow air right through it. So this is a open cell, or it feels a lot like an open cell. The product can tend to saturate into the pad, but I don't over apply my product, so I don't see a lot of issues with that. But these thicker pads, these Lake Country force pads, seem to float across the panel really, really well. They're not grabby. I just like them. They're the Lake Country force pads, and they seem to do really, really well for me, whether I'm using them on a cheap DA like this DA from Harbor Freight, or a Griot's or Rupes. I know some guys don't like the thick pads on a large throw machine, but these pads are pretty stout. They'll handle that large throw across the panel. They don't tend to collapse, and that's why I like them. They work great on a flex machine as well. The VRG 3401, they work great on them. But I'm a big fan of Lake Country force pads because of the fact they're a little bit thicker. I like them in tight areas. Now when it comes to Griot system, their Griot pads are low profile pads. I tend to want to apply maybe some distilled water to the pad, maybe prime these pads so they're not as grabby. They tend to be a little grabby, just like the Buff and Shine pads, the low profile pads. But I like Griot's pads. They've been working really well for me with their cream, so I kind of have them. They work well for me in my world. Lake Country seems to be the pad that I'm going to when I'm talking about foam. I'll make a video about microfiber cutting pads and stuff, but when it comes to foam, I like Lake Country. I like their thick pads. You can get in tight areas with them. I don't worry about the backing plate hitting any area of the car because this has got more surface space between the backing plate and the surface of the pad. Works great. They hold up really well. When I'm doing headlight restorations, again, I like Lake Country's force pads. These are their 3-inch pads. They're medium cut pad. I use these for my compounding phase on headlight restorations, and then I'll use the 3-inch white polishing pad to finish up with a polishing, a polish, a finer polish, not a compound. I'll use the Lake Country white light cut pads. I like them. They're thick. They seem to hold up really well. I've probably had these 3-inch pads, and I use them almost daily with a lot of my headlight restorations. I've probably had these pads here for several months, probably 4 or 5 months, and use them almost on a weekly basis. They hold up well, and I clean them by hand. I don't rough them up, but they seem to hold up. But I just wanted to make a simple video. Again, this is the Lake Country. This is a very soft, no-cut pad at all. This is great for applying waxes or sealants if you want. Then, of course, they've got their black pad, which is a finishing pad. You can use this with a finishing polish. You can even use this with a wax or sealant. It really doesn't have much of a cut to it at all. I just like these pads. The Velcro backing, or what we call the hook and loop, because I don't think they're allowed to use the word Velcro. They hold up well even after saturating them with getting them clean and running water through them. They hold up. The Velcro backing plate or the Velcro on the back of the foam pad to the backing plate of my DA. They hold on real nice and tight. They don't come apart, yet they're kind of easy to release. They don't fight me when I want to take them off, but again, they won't fly off the DA either, so the Velcro is a really great design. Their hook and loop system with Lake Country is a great design. I like them. I think if I was to recommend a foam pad for about 70% of paint correction, unless you're getting really, really aggressive, you need a microfiber pad, maybe you need a wool pad with a rotary. When it comes to foam pads and about 70-75% of minor paint correction that I'm doing, I like Lake Country Force pads. I like that they're thick. But the Buff and Shine pads work really well. I tend to have to prime them a little bit so they're not grabby on the surface. These hold up really well. I like them. This is their maroon one. I think it's their medium cut. Or maybe this is their light cut, I think. And then they have the orange one, which is their medium cut. But what's interesting about Buff and Shine, even though they consider this their light cut, their maroon cut on their low profile pad, this will act a lot like the medium cut, the orange cut. I really don't see a difference between them. They'll both get moderate to deep defects depending on what I'm doing. But I own both of them. I actually own probably 10 of each one of these pads, and they hold up great for me. They don't start to fall apart or release from their Velcro backing plate. So I just wanted to make a quick video. Somebody asked me about the pads that I use. What do I like? Lake Country Force pads seem to be 2 thumbs up for me. The low profile Buff and Shines seem to work really well for me. And then I like the Griots foam pads. I have some other foam pads too. I use some of the spider pads from with 3D Car Products has a spider pad. Shoals Concept have a spider pad, but I use those in unique situations. One day I'll show you some of the unique stuff I use them with. But and then again, if there's microfibers that you're interested in, huge fan of Meguiar's microfiber cutting pads, the 5.5 inch or the 6 inch. Would love if they still had the 3 inches, but they don't. They discontinued them. I think Optimum, you can get 3-inch cutting pads with them that are microfiber. They seem to be pretty good, but I love the Meguiar's one, and they don't make them anymore. But anyway, that's just kind of my quick video about the pads that I like. Hopefully that helps that subscriber that asked me about them, and hopefully that helps you out. Until next time, guys, I appreciate all of you, all of your support. If you have any suggestions or you want to know something about a product, how does it work, what do I think about it, please feel free to leave a comment on one of the videos. I'd be happy to do it for you. If I have the product relatively available to me, I'll do it. If not, I'll get it and I'll give you my opinion about it. Love to help anybody I can. Until next time, guys, be safe, love one another, and we'll see you the next time. Take care.